Hi guys, today we're going to be working with some questions on first principle differentiation. So the most important thing you guys need to understand about first principle differentiation is how does this formula right here work. So there's a notation you guys need to understand. What does f of x plus h mean? Okay, so let's take a function like f of x. Okay, and we'll say f of x is x squared. So if I went f of x plus h, okay, whatever is happening to x, like in this case x is being squared, that needs to happen to h as well. So I'll add the h to this x and I'm going to square it. Okay, you'll then square this and it'll become x squared plus 2xh plus h squared. Okay, makes sense. Now you may also have a function. Let's look at a function where we have more variations to this. So let's say we had f of x is now equal to, let's say, 3x squared plus 2x plus 3. And what would this then look like if we took it into f of x plus h? So we're going to look here. We're going to say 3 into x plus h all squared. Can you see that in this example right here, what you have is the x plus h is being squared like we showed above, and it's also going to be multiplied by 3 afterwards. So then I'm going to have plus 2 into x plus h and then plus 3, and afterwards we'll multiply all of this here out. So that's the first part you guys need to understand that's slightly different. The next part you guys need to understand is what is this f of x? Okay, and this f of x is just the function. So if we had f of x equals x squared, we'll just fill in that to that section, and the section I'm referring to here is this part, but remember it is being minused. And then finally, so now let's go through an example of doing one of these. Okay, in this question here I have that f of x equals x squared minus 3. So I'm going to write my expression f prime x, which is then the first derivative, equals the limit as h approaches 0 over, all this is over. So I have f of x plus h. So I'm going to have x plus h all squared minus 3 minus, and this part I like to put into brackets to make sure I don't make any mistakes, and I'll open the brackets, x squared minus 3, and all of this is going to be over h. Now we're going to continue. We're going to then simplify this. Equals the limit as h approaches 0, and then this is then going to be x squared plus 2x plus h squared minus 3 minus x squared plus 3 all over h. We still can't apply our limit because if we applied our limit now it would be undefined. So let's look here, let's see what cancels out. This x squared here cancels out with this negative x squared. This h squared stays, this negative 3 cancels out with this positive 3, and I'm just left with 2xh plus h squared over h. So I'll say this is then here the limit as h approaches 0. And if we look here, we can take a common factor of h out. So if I take out a common factor of h, I'm left with 2x plus h all over h. Okay, so then this h will cancel over this h, and then now I'm left with the first derivative as the limit as h approaches 0 is 2x plus h. I can now apply my limit, and applying my limit just means I'm going to substitute 0 in where h is. So it'll be 2x plus 0, which will just be 2x. Now, I hope you guys can see how this works. I would recommend, if you are struggling with this before, if you just go through and work out all these examples. There is a bonus question in the end. Now, if I had to put this into steps, because you guys seem to like steps, I get this requested from my students that I work with, that steps can be really helpful. So let's look at some, if we had to put what we've done into steps. So we'd say that step 1 would be our sub in. So we're substituting everything in. Okay. Our second step would be to simplify. And then there's when we are multiplying everything out. Our third step would be then to cancel off. Okay, and then we are going to factorize. So when I say cancel off, I mean the terms that are like negative and positive of each other. Then we're going to factorize. And finally, we're going to apply limit. And these steps will work for all the questions. Okay, so if you just do these steps, you'll be good. Let's move on to the next question, which is what we have right here. So I have that h prime x is then equal to the limit as h approaches 0, and then right here I'm going to have 2 minus x plus h squared minus open brackets 2 minus x squared all over h. So that's our first step. We substituted everything in. We're now going to move on to our second step, which is where we're going to multiply everything out. And I'm going to have 2 minus x squared minus 2xh minus h squared minus 2 plus x squared over h. We're now going to cancel off. This positive 2 will cancel off with this negative 2. This positive x squared will cancel off with this negative x squared. And I'm left with negative 2xh minus h, right? And that's going to give me, in my next line, the limit as h approaches 0. So I can take out negative h or just h as a common factor, and I'll be left with negative 2x minus h all over h. These h's will now cancel off, and then once we don't have an h alone in our denominator, we can then apply the limit. So if I apply the limit here, I'll be left with negative 2x, and that is your final answer. Time to move on to the next one. Let's look at this question here. We have g prime x is equal to the limit as h approaches 0. Okay, and then we have f of x plus h. So I'm going to have negative, open brackets, x plus h all squared plus 3 into x plus h minus, and then I'll just open the brackets here, negative x squared plus 3x all over h. That will then give me the limit as h approaches 0, and I'm going to have negative x squared minus 2x h. You guys can multiply this here out, and you will get this answer if you aren't familiar with the shorter method. Minus h squared plus 3x plus 3h plus x squared minus 3x all over h. Okay, now let's see which terms cancel off. I have this negative x squared, I have this positive x squared, I have this plus 3x, I have this minus 3x. Oh, I put an extra plus 3x there. Okay, so I made a slight mistake. So this will go off. So then I have this plus 3x cancels off with this negative 3x. I have this positive x squared, it cancels off with this. Oh yes, this is meant to be plus 3h. Okay, perfect. And then I have, yeah, that's about everything that cancels out. So this cancels off with this. So now I'm going to move on to taking out my common factor of h. So I'll have a limit as h approaches 0, and that's going to be negative 2x h minus h squared plus 3h all over h, and then I'll now get the limit as h approaches 0. I get h into negative 2x minus h plus 3 all over h. These will now cancel off. I can now apply my limit. I can now apply my limit, and I'll get negative 2x plus 3. And that is my final answer. So if you'd like to look at all the steps together, this is what we've done. And then we can now move on to the final. Okay, we're now doing our first example where we have an x to the power 3. And we're going to apply the same steps when working with this. It's just going to test a bit more of your algebra. So we'll have the limit as h approaches 0 of f of x plus h minus f of x all over h. You do get a mark for just writing this formula down, so I would recommend you do it. And then I have f prime equals the limit as h approaches 0. So here I'll have 2 into x plus h to the power 3 minus 2x to the power 3 all over h. Now you may know the quick way to multiply this, but I'm just going to use the longer method. So I'll have the limit as h approaches 0, and I'll have 2 into x squared plus 2x h plus h squared all into x plus h minus 2x to the power 3 over h. I get the limit as h approaches 0. I'll get your 2 into, and then I'm going to multiply this out. My first term here, my first term there, second term here, second term there, this term here, and then that term there. So let's look at that, what that's going to look like. I'm going to get x to the power 3 plus x squared h. Then I'm going to get plus 2x squared h plus 2x h squared plus h squared x plus h to the power 3 minus 2x to the power 3 all over h. Then I'm going to multiply it out by the 2, so now the limit as h approaches 0. Let me just make sure my answer is correct. Okay, so I'll have here x squared times x to the power 3, x squared h, yes, 2x squared, yes. Okay, that is right. So let's look at this now. When I multiply now by this 2, I have 2x to the power 3 plus 2x squared h plus 4x squared h plus 4x h squared plus 2h squared x plus 2h to the 3 all minus 2x to the power 3, and this is all going to be over h. So now I can cancel off like what we always do. So I'll cancel off this with this term right here because they're like terms, and now all my terms have an h in them, so I can take out a common factor of h. So I'll say this equals the limit as h approaches 0 of h into 2x squared 2x squared plus 4x squared plus 4xh plus 2hx plus 2h squared. Okay, this h will now cancel with this h. If I then applied my limit, I would just get 2x squared plus 4x squared, and my final answer is just 6x squared. Because these were like terms, you could have added them sooner and your answer would still be correct. So when we're applying the limit, we're going to substitute 0 in. So if I substitute 0 in, 4x times 0 is just going to cancel out. 2hx going to cancel out. This is also going to cancel out because anything times 0 is 0. And that's how I'm then left with this. So if you guys just want to look at this whole question, just so you can see it from start to finish, let me just erase this for you guys. Okay, now you guys can look at this whole question and see what we did, and see we follow the same steps. Okay, I'm now going to move on to this bonus question for you guys. This is now the bonus question. If you stuck around, went through the sums, here it is. So how do we then work with a fraction? So that is what we're going to do now. Okay, so we're going to have the h first derivative equals the limit as h approaches 0. We're going to substitute in as we normally substitute. So I'm going to have 3 over x plus h, okay, minus 3 over x all over h. So what I like to do for these questions is, I don't like working with a fraction over a fraction. It gets a bit complicated. So I like rewriting the expression as 3 over x plus h in brackets minus 3 over x, and this whole expression is being divided by h. Okay, so now I would then add, subtract these, and to subtract these I would need a common denominator. So I'm going to have this here equals the limit as h approaches 0, and here my common denominator is going to be x into x plus h, and this will then be 3x minus 3x plus 3x minus 3x minus 3h. Right, and this is being divided. We can also do the reciprocal and say that this is times 1 over h. And now I'm going to have And now I'm going to have the limit as h approaches 0 for negative 3h over x into x plus h times this 1 over h. Now this here, this can be cancelled off with this, okay? And now I'm left with negative the limit as h approaches 0 for negative 3 over x into x plus h. I can now apply my limit, and then after applying my limit, I would have negative 3 over x into x, and then my final answer would be negative 3 over x squared. You could also write this as negative 3 to the x to the minus 2. So that's how you also do the fractions. I hope this video is really helpful. If I could do the videos in any way that will be more helpful, or if you want any specific videos, please leave a comment and like. All the best, guys.